In economic history, financial empires are rarely born overnight. They usually begin with a small idea, an idea that seems ordinary in its moment, but over time becomes a system that reshapes the world. In the late 16th century, Amsterdam was nothing more than a small city on the edge of Europe, a city of a few tens of thousands of people, surrounded by water, fog, and the cold winds coming from the North Sea. It was not the capital of an empire, it was not a global financial center, but there was one thing that set it apart from many other European cities: merchants. These were not simply buyers and sellers in crowded markets. They were men who thought in numbers, opportunities, and risks. Men who understood that real wealth does not come from land, but from movement, from trade, from transporting goods from one place to another. At that time, global trade flowed mostly through a single route, the spice route. Pepper, cinnamon, nutmeg, and cloves, small goods in size, but in Europe they were sometimes worth more than gold. These spices came from distant islands in Asia, in regions that are now part of Indonesia and India. The journey took months across dangerous oceans. The problem was that this route was controlled by one power: Portugal. The Portuguese had built a network of forts and ports stretching from Africa to India and Southeast Asia. Every ship passing through those waters paid a price, and any competitor faced Portuguese cannons. But in Northern Europe, the Dutch were thinking differently. Instead of accepting the monopoly, they decided to break it. In 1594, a group of merchants gathered in Amsterdam inside a modest house. It was not a formal meeting, no palace, no council hall, just a wooden table and a few men with capital and courage. The idea they discussed was dangerous, even crazy to some. Why not go to Asia ourselves? The journey would be long, dangerous, and it could take years. Ships could sink, crews could die from disease, Portuguese fleets might attack them, but the potential profit was enormous. A single cargo of spices could multiply the original investment several times. But a new problem appeared. Even the richest merchants in Amsterdam could not finance such a journey alone. Ships were expensive, crews were expensive, and the risks were enormous. This is where an idea emerged that would change economic history: risk sharing. Instead of one man financing the voyage, dozens of people could invest in it. Each person would contribute a portion of the capital, and if the expedition succeeded, everyone would share the profit. The idea was simple, but revolutionary, because it allowed capital to be raised on a scale never seen before. And so the first Dutch expeditions to Asia began. They were not perfectly successful. Ships suffered from disease, mutiny, and violent storms. When the first expedition returned to Amsterdam, much of the crew was barely alive. But they brought back something important: spices. The quantity was not huge, but it proved one crucial thing: the journey was possible. And that realization triggered what could be described as the first investment boom in history. Merchants wanted more ships. Investors wanted more profit. But competition between Dutch trading groups soon created another problem. Each company was sending ships to Asia. Each company was buying spices, and prices were rising. So the Dutch government decided to take a bold step: merge the companies into one single entity. In 1602, a company was created that would transform the global economy: the Dutch East India Company. This company was unlike any business the world had seen before. It was not simply a trading company. It owned ships, armies, fortresses. It even had the authority to wage war and sign treaties. But the true innovation was not its military power. It was the way it was financed. For the first time in history, ordinary people could buy shares in a company. Not only wealthy merchants, but craftsmen, carpenters, doctors, and even some servants. Suddenly, the economy became open to many more participants. More than 1,000 investors purchased shares in the company, and this marked the birth of something entirely new: the stock market. If someone wanted to sell their share, they could simply find another buyer.
This created the first true financial exchange in the world, in Amsterdam. At first, it was little more than a small bridge near the harbor. Merchants gathered there every day. They talked about ships arriving from Asia, about prices, about expected profits. Some bought, some sold, but something else was also happening: speculation. Some investors bought shares because they believed in the company, but others bought simply because they expected the price to rise. And so a new world was born, the world of financial markets. But Amsterdam's economic success did not come only from trade or finance. There was another critical factor: innovation. In the late 16th century, a seemingly simple invention changed an entire industry. A Dutch inventor named Cornelius Corneliuszoon developed a new mechanical system for sawmills. This mechanism allowed wind power to drive saw blades at remarkable speed. Before this invention, cutting wood required several workers laboring for hours. After it, production became dramatically faster. The impact was immediate. The cost of building ships dropped significantly, and suddenly Amsterdam could produce large numbers of ships much more quickly. Exactly what it needed, because global trade in that era depended on one thing above all: fleets. The more ships you had, the more trade you controlled. Within a few decades, the Dutch fleet became the largest in Europe. Dutch ships appeared everywhere: in Asia, in Africa, in the Americas. Money flowed into the city from every direction. Banks, insurance firms, speculators, merchants, all gathered in one place. But economies never remained dominant forever. Across the North Sea, another city was quietly watching: London. At first, it was less financially advanced than Amsterdam, but it possessed something different: a larger market, and a state with growing military power. London was also developing a new economic engine: textile manufacturing. English wool was among the finest in Europe. At first, England simply exported raw wool to the continent, but over time, English merchants realized something important. Why sell only the raw material when you could manufacture cloth and sell it for a much higher price?
So the British textile industry began to expand rapidly. Dutch and French weavers migrated to London, bringing their expertise with them. Over the decades, London transformed into a major industrial and commercial center. Its population grew rapidly. Its harbor filled with ships. Wealth accumulated across the city. But the true transformation came when London entered the world of finance. Banks began to appear. Credit systems became more organized, and international trade increasingly depended on financial capital. Eventually, the two cities entered into rivalry. Not only military rivalry, but economic rivalry. Who would control global trade? Who would control the seas? And who would control money? The naval wars between England and the Dutch Republic lasted for many years. They gradually weakened the Dutch economy. At the same time, London was growing even faster. By the end of the 17th century, Europe's financial power slowly shifted from Amsterdam to London. But the legacy Amsterdam left behind never disappeared, because it gave the world three economic inventions that reshaped history: the joint stock company, the stock exchange, and the foundations of modern capitalism. Every financial market in the world today, from Wall Street to Tokyo, from London to Hong Kong, traces its roots back to that small city of canals and merchants. A city that was not the largest, nor the most powerful, but the first to understand a new truth about the modern world: that wealth does not come primarily from land, it comes from capital. And when money is allowed to move freely, it has the power to reshape the destiny of the world.